Hey everybody, this is Dave Cooper, and we are with Eli Gold, Q-Web Wood Structures, market development guy, and Sticks Consulting. This guy is doing everything. He is all over the United States, Canada, the Caribbean, Latin America, and he works with the International Development Bank doing all kinds of great stuff. This is going to be a special show today because we have a lot to go over because Eli is changing how we build. Eli, thanks for coming on today.
Dave, thanks for having me. It's great to see you, man.
Yeah, you as well. So, Eli, why don't you just take a brief moment and tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then let's hop into this.
Absolutely. Well, I declared an architecture forestry dual many years ago, and then kind of went back to my native Vermont, where I am today, and started a vertical company. But that dual skill set gave me some unique work permits in Canada, and I got to know a bunch of people around what I would call used to be heavy timber and then became the birthplace of a lot of the mass timber stuff. So when years later I was asked to help with nonprofit market development, and I had to take the chance. It's a great role for me. You love knowledge sharing. I do too. So my consulting business now really has about 80% Canadian clientele in the nonprofit sector. Q-Web, the Quebec Wood Export Bureau, is a great organization that allows me to train architects, do humanitarian missions in the Caribbean. We're going to talk about solve problems, work with some great export savvy shops, and I also want to shout out to their sister organization out west, BC Wood. So these are all teams of folks I work with, but really I've had a chance to become an ally to the broader wood structure industry, and U.S. included. So, but today I think we're going to talk about some niche activities that I've gotten a chance to be involved with, and some great people I've gotten to meet as the mass timber and the northern wood structure expertise goes south. It's really coming into a bunch of zones in which the solutions are going to be different, the challenges are different, and I'm a problem solver. I love focusing on those challenges, and so I have been taking it sometimes upon myself, and sometimes with our nonprofit clientele to engage with the best practices, best players. How do we bring all that we've learned from the North and combine with all the problems, solutions that need to be done to really succeed in making wood structure a global movement, even in the mid latitudes. And the place I know best is really Southeast U.S., Gulf Coast, Caribbean, Central America. So that's where we're going to focus today.
So, I mean, I love this. You're right. I mean, we're going to be in the Caribbean, the South. We're going to actually even be in San Diego for a little bit today. This is going to be a great conversation. And so when we talk about wood structures, Eli, I mean, it is not the predominant way of building everywhere, is it?
No, not at all. And so there's a tremendous lift with the culture, the education, the best practices need to become clear, and we got to admit we're a young industry where we have different capabilities. And then you and I think to bring it back home, you and I are going to really realize that, I mean, the needs are huge when you're rebuilding from something like a hurricane. Everybody rebuilds, so there's going to be there's a need for a massive level of speed, industrialized construction. Some of the things we've learned about, you can't do it one concrete block at a time. You have to bring in people who know how to produce at a higher level. But those people coming from the North have to really listen and learn about what it's going to take to make wood, right. or to take all the expertise we have and then combine it with expertise on the ground. So that's a frontier right now. And that's why, as a problem solver, I love to be there and find other people who have brought really key insight.
Well, I mean, that's it, right? So the housing problem's already an issue. The affordable housing problem's an issue. And then you throw natural disasters on top of it. And it just compounds the issue in so many areas, especially in the Caribbean and South America and Latin America, all of those areas. And I know we're going to touch on all of that. And those areas also predominantly are concrete areas. They love their concrete. But today we're going to cover, why wood is a better solution or another solution that can really speed up the rebuilding process and save the buildings while they're there, because natural disasters are only part of the problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's a privilege to work in post-disaster scenarios, but it sort of hits you in the gut. You're never quite able to get there in time, and then you're scrambling to marshal resources, and then you have to figure out who's doing good work on the ground, because we're only bringing one piece of the puzzle. We're bringing, like when we brought 6,000 small home units to Haiti, that's great, but like how do you really elevate that now to how is wood going to be part of long-term resilient housing? How is that housing going to be actually long-term attainable to local residents?
Right.
Who's planning where that's happening? And I mean, that's not something we can solve for. It's something we have to find really good people to team up with, and it's a longer term. So I'm trying to shift the focus from post-disaster to being more proactive about how to address things coming into the situation, and that's why we're going to be we're not coming in on a parachute here. We're actually coming in today to talk about what are the long-term solutions.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what I love about, QWeb and everything, all the work you're doing with them to pull all this data and information together, not only just here in the United States, but like you said, in South America, the Caribbean, but also with Sticks, right? Because you put your own personal time into helping people figure this stuff out as well. So I think that's, it's super commendable that you're spending so much time in the nonprofit space. Your heart is truly there.
Oh, absolutely. And once you've seen some of the things that I've had a chance to see, it's hard not to. So it's great to have, it's great to have a little bit of time to go and do stuff like that. And it's ironically, it's not just in it's not just in the tropics. Sometimes the places that you need to go and do some work that are not that, or your expertise can have an impact, might be in a post-fire zone in Northern California. So
right.
When you have a niche skill set and you can be of assistance, it's nice to be able to have a chance to go and see what you can do to help. But it's just as much a burden, because you're never quite sure that you can do it in time. So.
Right, for sure. Well, let's hop into it here. I know we have a slide deck presentation. I'm going to put that on the screen in 1 second. And then we're going to go out to California. We're going to talk to a really cool guy named Dan Hume, who's giving up his surfing right now to be on the show, which is awesome. I love that. And then we're going to go down to Puerto Rico, and we're going to talk with Luis down there, who also has given up his surfing to be on the show today. So this is super cool. Let's have fun with it. But first, Eli, let's learn a little bit more about QWeb and what you have going on. Sound good?
Absolutely. I'll set the stage for why we have such a varied group of guys here. So I've been running a activity program called Rebuilding Resilience. It was rebuilding resilience in the Caribbean only, but we've seen, as you know, Gulf Coast, Central America. The hurricanes are bigger; they're hitting everywhere, and the challenges for wood structures are not just hurricanes. I don't want to say that's the easiest. I'm not an engineer, but we all know that like structures are getting more and more resilient, and long-term problem solving for best practices against not only the hurricane, but seismic activity and also wood degrading organisms, especially termites. So we started with symposium series. We've done timber trade missions. We've done awesome post-disaster response, and now we're in the long game for wood structure market development throughout the mid-latitudes. And I would just want to say from the map point of view, we all know the different code jurisdictions here, but it's really nice to look at the maps for a second, because you see on the left the seismic hotspots, and down in the lower right how Puerto Rico's actually a pretty high seismic zone. We're going to see more about that. In the middle, the wind speeds are no joke through this whole region. We all know Miami-Dade hurricane. And then on the right-hand side, that's a Florida university tracking the different termite species. So the native subterranean or the subterranean species, including introduced Formosan termites, Asian termites. And then because there's this other hotspot in the Southwest, San Diego, I really went to learn about who's got the expertise, who's been around termites for many years and really understands how to do that, and who's doing wood preservation treatment. So this is a triple threat scenario, no doubt. And as a problem solver, there's plenty of problems to look at here. So
Sure.
I went to Puerto Rico last year with a group of experts and met a group of great people there. And we did a really deep dive in a combination trade mission and job site tour and expert knowledge transfer. And on the right-hand side, you see Dan Hume on, I think, day one. I don't think he'd been there for 15 minutes, and we had found Formosan termites, and he was talking about how mineral salt treatments could change the game of what we were looking at there. And his enthusiasm and expertise was on the job immediately. And it's we got high water tables, we've got major challenges all through this. So I'm going to let him speak more about that. As we traveled around the island that we all know got hammered by Hurricane Maria, less known was that in 2020, as they were picking up from Hurricane Maria, it was hit by a series of earthquakes that really hammered especially the concrete buildings. So the Puerto Rican experience is that many of the resilient structures through the hurricane and the earthquakes were actually wood structures. And I think that is a really big shift for a culture that's really geared towards concrete bearing walls. But then when the earth is shaking and your structure needs to have a ductile resistance, there's a realization now that you actually might be there actually might be hybrid or wood structure technologies that might be the last one standing. So that was an amazing experience to see all those in such a small area. And we're really standing on the shoulders here and following in the wake of some amazing Puerto Rican rebuild efforts. And I want to call out Janelle de Angel in the green shirt there, a Puerto Rican architect from Perkins and Will who took her own time off and went back to her own native island to really rebuild not just the structures, but really to plan for what climate change, larger storms, new communities should look like. She's absolutely a dynamo. And Perkins and Will, to their credit, founded a global nonprofit around her leadership that's now Resiliency. And there's local chapters like Resiliency PR, which are planning for rising seas, planning for increasing storms. And that's the match I need. I can help bring a lot of structures to something, but I can't really help with the right way to plan a new, more resilient community and do that equitably for the people who are largely the people most impacted are often in the most vulnerable communities economically and geographically. So her leadership here is something I've followed to Puerto Rico, and she pointed out to me a local nonprofit that she sat on the board from that was doing an awesome job to bootstrap, basically training people from those vulnerable communities to learn how to be the first responders, rebuild their neighbors, put the roof back on their grandmother's place, go out and do it in a way that's going to be resistant to the next hurricane. So that's why I got to know Protechos and why we're going to feature them a little bit here today. So hopefully that brings you into the landing strip that I went into and gives us a great way to focus some of the broader themes on some some really good case studies today.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I love it. I love seeing the pictures and where everybody is, and I think this conversation is needed in such a big way. What do you got here?
Yeah, sorry. This is my
My
last
next vacation home
piece of, I wish. It's
Wow.
actually a reminder that everybody rebuilds. So, and we should not apologize. I don't think Elon Musk ever actually says sorry for doing research on high-end markets, because people buy that the high-end residential market is the one that says, I want to figure out mass timber in the tropics. I want to figure out hurricane resistance. I want to rebuild. So this home here was being built by my friend Nick Auger and his team at NA Structures when Hurricane Dorian hit in the Bahamas. And Nick was flying in when everybody else was flying out, and the home was under construction. Not only did it survive that one full force, but it's been hit since a second time. So Nick's an example of an experienced northern prefab company who's working in the tropics, using treated lumber to make their own mass timber, because it's really difficult to get the usual concrete slab out to this remote site. Right. The client wanted those big overhangs. And then on the left-hand side, we have a also northern company who's figured out how to take a factory treatment process and deeply infuse wood with mineral salts. So that's a known ingredient, single source mineral ingredient that Dan's going to teach us a lot more about. It's got great insect resistance properties, wood degrading mechanisms, and fire. So those two companies brought northern technologies to the region. And I think the really exciting part that I'm working on now over the coming years, finding synergies with guys like these two who have already been working in their respective markets.
I love it. So why don't we hop into it? I mean, we need to understand more about these treatments, about what the real issues that they're facing are, and how wood is a solution for that, based on using the techniques that you're just talking about and somebody like Dan brings into it. So why don't we bring Dan Hume onto the show right now? Dan, welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Hey, it's great having you. So, Dan, you are the CEO of Hume Termite and the CTO of Best Preservation. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are personally first, and then let's get into what these two companies do. How about that?
That's great. Thank you. So I've been in the termite industry, integrated pest management industry, for the last 30 years. Traditional treatments, soil treatments, fumigations, local treatments. And started understanding and learning about borate minerals, and really started to like what they provide to homeowners and environmentally, and just started branching from there, and eventually started Best Preservation.
Love it. I love it. So, and you guys met how? I know, Eli, you're always on a mission to find the best and the brightest wherever you're traveling and understand the problem. So I'm going to assume that you didn't meet him at some random breakfast joint.
No, I want to credit Dan for, the Quebec manufacturers who had brought their factory built insight into treatment really pointed to Dan and said Dan was the guy who was out there doing 40,000 termite inspections. They went and visited him just like I did. He showed us all these wood structures that he had treated. He showed us what he had seen. And so I mean, he's really been a missionary of a treatment that is not well understood, and has helped to share his knowledge among people who have then created a really more industrialized version of that. So I went to learn about borates through a mutual introduction. And I think we're all basically on different points on the same team on this one now. And we'll all figure out how to work together. But we absolutely met Dan because of his track record.
So, Dan, I'm just curious, right? So you have a traditional integrated pest management business that's been around for years and years and years. Eli, I think you said 40,000. I mean, that's just an incredible amount of knowledge and time, spent inspecting homes that are having issues. Tell us a little bit about that service, and then let's get into what's going on with best preservation as well. And I want to understand the journey. How did you go from traditional treatments to trying to find an alternative treatment that is healthier, safer, and better, not only for the buildings but for our environment?
Yeah, so the integrated pest management industry is a fantastic industry. It protects homes, inspections. It looks for water intrusion. It looks for wood destroying organisms. The problem is there's inaccessible areas to just about every structure, and there's always the unknown. As homeowners, are the termite companies doing the right thing? And so I have a lot of really high-end clientele here in San Diego and Orange County areas here in Southern California. And I wanted to provide more protection for those inaccessible areas to eliminate that unknown. And that's when I started really understanding about borates, started reaching out to places like Mississippi State and LSU, Dr. Ambergy, Dr. Reagan, Kevin Reagan, Shane Kitchens, Mark Manning, and they just kind of took me under their wing because I had been treating with borates topically, but I didn't really understand the complete impact of it until I met these PhDs in wood science.
So you start understanding, you start researching how to do this. And you mentioned something that I think is really important: existing structures versus new construction. There's a big difference on how one would look at that and how one would treat it, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So traditional structures, again, with inaccessible areas, fumigations come into play. It's, sometimes difficult to deliver product into areas that we don't know if the product's going to where it needs to be effective. Yep. And when you have new construction, the menu of treatment options obviously expands a little bit, and that's where those borates come into play. And, my thought has always been, if you can treat the lumber and take food source away with a very benign mineral salt, why aren't we doing that?
So how did this all come together that mineral salt does all of this fabulous work? I mean, am I going to keep the pests out of my system if I just eat mineral salt every day?
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is, the thing is, the borate is a micronutrient. So we do ingest it in small amounts in our fruits and vegetables every day. Right. It's used as soil amendments. Farmers use it when borates, soils become borate depleted. They add borates as a micronutrient for the fruits and vegetables to thrive. And so we do ingest it. The beautiful thing, it's such a soluble molecule that we can process it and discard it. So unlike other traditional preservatives that tend to stay in your system, this product we can pass through. So extremely safe, extremely long-term, and it's just something that always fascinated me. And again, it wasn't really until I met the guys at Mississippi State and LSU, and they really kind of took me under their wing and showed me, this is a possibility. I mean, this is a reality. Yeah. Borates have been around for a long time.
Some of the other places we use them, if I'm not wrong, are actually in our laundry detergent and our eye drops. So that is how benign they are to mammals. Right. But how it kills termites, Dan, you want to? That's a really fascinating.
Yeah, please tell us.
So termites, all termites have a protozoa in their gut. We call it a termite soup, so to say. Yeah. It's something that this bacteria breaks down the cellulose, so they can convert it into a sugar and get energy from it. So this borate, when they ingest it, and they kind of unknowingly ingest it because it's no VOC content. It's just becomes part of the cells of the wood. But once they ingest it, it breaks down that protozoa, sterilizes them, so to say, so they can no longer fundamentally convert wood to sugar. And because it's a fundamental process, it's not like a topical insecticide for roaches that the roaches become resistant over time. The termite would actually have to change as a termite, and that's not going to happen anytime soon. So this is really, you're creating an environment that they just cannot survive in. It's impossible for them to live in these treated structures.
So that's amazing. It stops them from digesting the wood. Therefore, they don't eat any more wood. They either die or move on. I
They
guess
starve and they
yeah.
dry up.
Correct. It just becomes very unattractive to them, and they rather go elsewhere. That's not going to be a problem for them. But yes, it fundamentally breaks down their metabolic process. So it's something that's it's again you're taking food source away when you're treating lumber.
So when you're actually treating this, do you have to wear protective equipment at all?
Sure, you do. You do. Masks, it can be an irritant, but again, you're going to pass it through. But it's something that, again, it's like, so when I do structures, I do it overhead and, it kind of rains down on me and different things, but it's a soap. It's like a U.S. Baraxo soap 20 mule team, if you're familiar. People use it as an antiseptic. Like an eye wash. I mean, it's used in many different applications. So we do have to wear protective gear, but it's something that's very safe.
One of the biggest things in my world, I'm an industrialized construction guy, I believe in offsite manufacturing and so forth. And the reason I ask that question is, we're always looking for how do we add better treatments to the lumber, to the wood, whether it's fire, whether it's termite, to get the longevity out of the structures we're building. And when you're building in a controlled environment, such as a manufacturing facility, and you got 300-400 people in there working, that's a real question. But you're absolutely right. This is something that, it's an irritant like soap. You go into the bathroom and somebody claps their hand with soap, it gets in your eye. It's going to burn a little bit, but it's not bad for you. It's not going to kill you. And what you're saying is this is a real, true, healthy, environmentally friendly way to do something not only on site, but it could be done in a factory environment as well, which is a big takeaway for me.
Yeah, well, people don't understand that the wood itself is more of a carcinogenic. Has more carcinogenic properties than the borate does.
Yeah. Here
in California, it's listed as a carcinogen. You breathe that sawdust, and your body has a difficult time breaking it down. Where this is so soluble, it just passes through you.
Yeah. That's so amazing that California is like of all the jurisdictions that I work with, and when I compare those, California's got to be the most rigorous for human health. And here Dan is working with a mineral that's actually sourced from California. Right. And it's very different than being a pesticide licensed, anything like that. It's really a soil amendment from their classification, right?
Yeah, there are no restrictions because of how benign it is. So anybody can apply it and anybody can purchase it. It's just understanding that the problem is there's not a lot of areas or outlets where you can buy it. It's not sold at some of the bigger box stores, and kind of a mystery why that's not happening, but hopefully that's going to change so people can kind of, be introduced to this and start utilizing it more into their home over time, whether it's re-roofing or remodeling. You just incorporate this borate into your structure, for existing homes. Over time, you're going to have less problems.
For sure. So what took you to Puerto Rico? Let's talk about this, right? I saw in the picture that Eli was sharing earlier, what was the purpose of that trip? And, what do you guys see coming out of this relationship?
Yeah. So, there's subterranean termites there. The Formosan termites are one of the most destructive and economically, impactful insects there is in the world. It causes billions of dollars of damage. Mm-hmm. And the traditional way to treat it is to treat the soil. Unfortunately, soil treatments kill other non-target insects. They potentially can contaminate groundwater, where this sodium borate, if you're treating the lumber, is above. There's really no environmental impacts at all with the sodium borate. There's no VOC content. It stays within the wood, and it stays there until it needs to be, until it's needed. So it's a different way of looking at it, and I think people will, Puerto Rico and the island of Puerto Rico is something where, I think they're getting maybe a little bit tired of contaminating their water source with these termites are so aggressive. They recommend that you treat soil annually, and that over time, amounts to a lot of product in the water and runoff, and affects environment, affects the ocean, affects waterways, and this above grade treatment it stops that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, speaking of Puerto Rico, I think we have somebody that's going to have an opinion on the problems that they're facing there every day. So why don't we bring in our next guest, Luis Remirero. I hope I said it right. He's going to come in and correct me. Let's bring in Luis and join this conversation. How you doing, Luis?
Hi guys, doing great. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, well, hey, we love having you here, minus the fact that you're the only one in a short sleeve shirt sitting outside in the sunny weather. But we're not going to get on that today. So listen, Luis, you're the executive director of Protechos, yes?
Yeah.
And it means in Spanish to protect, and it also means pros. And that's something that you focus on. But not only that, you focus on educating the next generation of trades. You focus on job placement, and you get grants and others to help you with this, because you almost have to develop your own workforce because you're lacking in that there as well. So why don't you just take 2 minutes and give us a little bit about your background, and then let's jump into what you're doing.
Yeah, so for the past 15 years, I've been developing emerging community ventures with the main motivator to be the social justice. So that has led me to work in different areas. For example, I started when I was younger working with more into public health. After the earthquake in 2011 in Haiti, I went to work there for several months. And I did enjoy working with public health, but as I had that eye-opening experience, I decided that I wanted to go more into public policy. So when I came back to Puerto Rico, I started working with different social justice ventures, leading me to work with reforestation programs. And in the past 4 years, then I changed my work area to construction, but especially, as you just were saying, more into the workforce development, because I've noticed that that's something that we lack in many areas. So in the past years, I've been leading Protechos. Protechos has been very great in developing more people that can help rebuild Puerto Rico. As you may know, in 2017, we got hit really hard by two major hurricanes. One was Irma, and then 2 weeks after we had Maria. And after that, we, the country realized that we didn't have the workforce necessary to rebuild and rebuild our basic infrastructure. So I went into this business to be able to help into that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you live there, you earn your living there, and I know we all know after those hurricanes how devastating it was to Puerto Rico, and to not have the workforce to rebuild is one issue, but then also being maybe limited on what you can use to rebuild because of issues such as water and termites and all of these things. Tell me a little bit about how, meeting Dan and Eli has kind of changed your thought process on what can be done in Puerto Rico and moving forward. And then I want to get into, this workforce development you're doing. I think it's amazing, and I'm sure a lot of people should take note of how you went about doing that.
Yeah, so one important thing has been here, the network of resources available for us. We have the particularity that we are part of the United States, but not in the same way as the other states. So we have some limitations in terms of commerce, of trades, and also of interaction with the rest of the countries that are next to us. And another huge thing is that Puerto Rico may sound in all parts of the world, but we are a very small country, and that means that the wood production here is not as great, and definitely is not sustainable in the way that we really need to use it. So the connection with Eli is a huge thing for us, because we can get wood in a more sustainable way, since we don't produce here wood whatsoever. And well, with Dan, it's huge, because thermal here it's something that everyone knows about, because it's a very good place for termites to thrive, right? And we can see it here in wood, in cement, everywhere. So having this opportunity to have this technology, and at the same time, it's something that is not that impactful to the environment. It means a lot to us because we have been like a ground of experiments for many things, and chemical spilling, and
Yeah.
having a way of treatment that is less impactful, or basically it doesn't have an impact in the environment, but then it can treat our main building blocks, that is wood, and also for so many years, I think it's huge.
What is huge? I mean, you're an island surrounded by our greatest resource in the world, which is the ocean and the water around you. The last thing we need to be doing is polluting that water 360 degrees around, right? With the wrong treatment, especially for guys like you and Dan who spend pretty much every morning of their lives in the water, swimming with the sharks and the fish and everybody else out there. So I love it. All right, so. One issue is termites, water damage, and the infrastructure or the engineering of these buildings, right? And Eli, I know you can talk to this as well. But QWeb, is that you're working on, that you're working with. And you said this, Luis, they help you bring lumber in, better lumber. They help you source better lumber. Is that what I heard?
Yep, we're working on that right now, but. Yeah, in like most of the wood that comes to Puerto Rico comes from the south, especially from the Amazon. And as we all know, that's not the best place to get the wood, especially that we know that it's not being cut in a sustainable way. And I know for sure that Eli and his network work very differently, work very different in that sense. And also, since we don't produce the wood here, it means that it's very expensive. By the way, I started to work in Puerto 3 years ago, a little bit more, and since that time to now, the wood has doubled the price, making the operation even more difficult, and also my nights being longer, writing more grants. So having access to more wood, and to wood also in a sustainable way, it's super meaningful to us.
Yeah, I would imagine it is. Eli, between QWeb and Sticks and everything you're doing. I mean, so, to kind of tie this all together, right? So wood's an issue, and getting better wood. All right, so that's something that Eli, you've helped, source and put together. Termites and water damage and fire and all that, that's another issue. We bring in another pro like Dan Hume, and he says, all right, well, we got some problem-solving techniques we can do to eliminate that or take it out altogether. And then there's also the structural side of this, Eli, which you focus a lot on as well, right? Which is, all right, well, if we're going to rebuild it and we're going to protect it from all these bad things, nature, termites, all of these things, we also have to build it better. And you showed a picture similar to that in your presentation as well. There's the structural side of how all this comes together, correct?
Yeah, I would love to mention because, it's the assumption has always been that treated wood is going to be southern yellow pine, and that has been largely true. And a lot of the wood it's a wood that takes treatment quite well. And the pressure treated industry has really grown to understand and be the best at deeply infusing southern yellow pine with various mixes. But the underlying codes do not say it has to be southern yellow pine or pressure treated. So what's really interesting about the new treatments coming in is that you can actually treat northern species and at the same impregnation levels, clear the same hurdles for fully treated lumber in a factory setting. So, and you're not actually pumping the wood so full of water. So the water use profile is quite a bit lower. The infusion of mineral salts continues to drive to the middle of the wood. You're not kiln drying after treatment, and you have the combinations. The end things that get tested are a combination of not just the treatment but the wood species itself. So, I love all wood, but I know my spruce pine fir from the Northeast the best. I know where it comes from. I know the ecosystem. So being able to have a treatment technology that handles that wood and that I feel good about as a human ecotoxicity guy is is really a game changer. And that's where we all decided it was worth the effort to form alliances, spread that knowledge, and get tested buildings out there, get lumber out there. And what we're working on as well for these guys is give the right people the lumber to get out there and get to where they can have an impact, and then we can all be proving this, because it's going to take some time to prove. Things change slowly in this industry. You're not going to just come in. There's a lot of people unfortunately making claims about less rigorous treatment. So you have to wade through all that, show people the testing, show people the proof of it, and I'm quite confident that I think the last thing that we should emphasize on a structural level is that salt environments like coasts, there's two things going on, and the testing protocols have evolved because a lot of the early generations of treatments were metal based, and they were actually corroding fasteners. So it's also a really good thing to have the underlying chemistry of the treatment be a salt, because then you're into one resistance factor, you're into more cost-effective fasteners. You don't have chemical warfare going on between the heavy copper and then you're buying stainless steel fasteners. Because I mean, in addition to the lumber budget, what guys like Protechos have to balance when they're paying their people and stocking their shelves is, are you stocking all stainless? What's the lumber cost? So from the actual build and total cost of structure, and being able to engineer with basically electroplated galvanized that's resistant to the same salt environment that you're going to face on the beach anyway, and have that be not fighting with your treatment. Those are the sort of things that in the long run, I think on a practical level, that makes a difference. And then that's part of the testing protocols of the mineral salts.
So just to wrap all this together, with Luis, which is interesting about this, right? So you have new wood products and species, you have engineering that is now happening, and you have new treatments for the insects, water, wood, fire, all these different things. But you're lacking a workforce. So I'm seeing how this is all coming together. But now you're saying, all right, well, we're going to pull all that together, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to work and get myself a grant, and we're going to start building our own workforce here on the islands. And then you're bringing all these best practices in to teach everybody how to build it better on the island. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
Excellent.
It has been a tough thing to do, especially at the beginning. I couldn't find good carpenters. One thing is that as Puerto Ricans, we can just go to the States and work, and by the economic distress that we're living here, the wages can be a third, starting in the same position that if you go to any place in the States. So it's very common for people just to go to the States and work for a few months per year and then come back. So it's not as easy to find carpenters. So what we did is that we started to develop our own workforce. We got a grant for that. And right now we're training 48 people per year, divided in 3 months courses. And that way we have been able to keep growing, to make more teams into the reconstruction, because we also work with the reconstruction of the roofs of people that lost it when the hurricanes came in. But to sustain that operation, we have had to train these people, and so far it has been a great ride.
Yeah, it has been a great ride, right? And you said you had to do up to 48 a year per the program that you were able to get the grant from. So that's 48 people that you and Protechos is educating and giving work, and they're able to make money. And not only that, you either hire them to help within your building company, or you not outsource, but you provide them opportunities to get a job with other construction companies on the island, right?
Yes, so it's also part of the grant. A percentage of the people that actually graduate from the program, that we have a really high graduate percentage, we need to place them in jobs. At least at the beginning, in the first year, we were able to hire them in our own program because we were growing rapidly. In the first 2 years, we grew like 300%, and we were able to do that. But in the past few months, we have been doing job fairs and also sending the graduates to our collaborators. And they get hired. People are super happy that they find carpenters, because it's not an easy thing to find right now, carpenters. And as you may know, after the hurricanes, there's many funds available, but there's not a workforce ready to do that. So we have been tapping into that.
Well, this all just makes sense, Eli, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to dive deep into this because, right, not only is wood more sustainable for building, it's been proven that it can stand up to, hurricanes and fires. I mean, if we really look at what's happening in the mass timber space all across, the country and now into the South America, Puerto Rico, Caribbean, all these other areas, it makes sense. Right? I mean, it just makes sense to build with wood, especially if we have ways to sustainably, environmentally friendly ways to protect it from all of these different things.
It can be done. You had a really interesting guest on recently who was asked why they weren't doing wood, and it was like, it's too complex. Like, we can't figure it all out. And we have to acknowledge that's true. I mean, the skills around wood, they come slow. It takes a while. It's not easy. It's a living material. But both of these guys are part of the resource network. When you take part in this and you say, I want to do it, you find that there's a whole community of that. And the other thing I think is that the workforce is such a big lift. I'm really glad that there's nonprofit working like this. I know it's not easy for Protechos. I wish I could help them more, give more. I think it's really on us in the U.S. to recognize that sort of effort. And I think one of the cool things about the U.S. is for all the struggles we have on our own, there's a lot of charitable giving and there's a lot of people doing great work charitably. So, if you check out protechos.org and look at how they're rated as using the funds, I verified that on the ground and really would recommend that people check that out because it's a triple it's a triple benefit there in terms of the outcomes, the labor force, and the reuse of the building stock they have there.
Yeah. Well, we're going to put all the links on how you can help as well, in the comments section down below in the write-up. So check that out. We'll also put it up on the screen so people can do that. I think it's a great thing. I just want to know why we're not seeing this in the offsite space more, why we're not taking more offsite down to the Caribbean islands, South America. I don't know if you know this, Eli, but I got a bunch of island builds under my belt where we were barging and shipping housing products, off the East Coast. So if you ever need some help on that, hey, especially if it's warm weather, I'm a game changer for you. I'll come in and I'll work all day long. So
I think we should. And I pointed out the successful ones before, but I think also what's exciting about this option is the islands really do appreciate what you're bringing when you can do that and they're so limited for their own labor and constraint. I would personally love to see us bringing more of the expertise and the flat pack kits, and then having more shops on islands that can actually take a shipload, take a bunch of material, and take some of the expertise that leverages our own construction. I mean, our in-shop manufacturing labor is an X factor more productive than doing things on site. And I know and everybody's labor constrained. So can we bring the knowledge? Can we bring the prefab systems and and really combine with the local materials and talent? That's the next step, and that's why we're staying involved with these guys.
Listen, you're importing the wood anyhow. Why not import a system, like you said, flat pack it in, and then put the local community to work, on an assembly approach. And it doesn't have to be in a factory. That flat pack could go up to a job site, because we know some of the roads in Puerto Rico, they're not like driving on American highways, right? They're hard to get to, some of these places. But you can definitely get a truck there, and you can definitely get workers there. All you need is a process, and the people willing to help and put it together and make a living. And that's not hard to find either, hopefully these days, especially if you have unskilled labor that wants to work. there's a way to put them to work. And I think that's a great value. So, all right, listen, you guys, did I miss anything that you wanted to make sure we got out there? Any of you?
Yeah, well, I want to say if you want to help protect us more, you can go to our website, you can donate. That's one main thing that really helps us. So you can go to www.protechus.org/donate. There's several ways to donate. You choose the best one for you. So if you want to help us from whatever part of the world you are right now, you can help us through donation. Or if you want to send more wood, we're more than glad to receive it here.
That's awesome. I also want to say I'm going to be training a lot more about mineral salt in this coming year. As you know, one of my core activities is educating architects. I'm an AIA provider, and I go pretty deep into the topics which I'm going after. I work with about 1,000 architects a year, and I'm going to be launching a new credit course, comprehensive guide to mineral salt treatments. And it's still looking in the rear view a little bit. So because I've brought Dan here as one of the amazing topical treatment resources, and I have a Quebec company, Boralife, who's really a leader in factory treatment. But I think, like you were saying, there's going to be a bunch of different treatment methodologies coming forward, and I'm excited to teach the architects out in front of this and specifiers. I also think Dan should point the way to some of the middle ground treatments as you evolve from being a site treater only. So we should all be ready to look up the soft launch of your new company, Best, BEST, and you might want to give some hints about what's coming down the pike with that, Dan.
Oh, it's really exciting. There's so much information that we're going to provide. We're also going to be training engineers and architects. And people just have to understand it's a reality to build a structure safely, environmentally, responsibly, that you can get protection from wood destroying organisms and fire for very long term. Yeah. And it's so exciting that that's the case. It's somewhat of a final solution in this kind of craziness that's the integrated pest management industry. And I love the industry. It's just sometimes not the most responsible with the chemicals that they use.
Well, isn't that the case? We find that out through history all over the news, right? There's always something that comes out 20 years later. It works in the beginning. I think that's the way of the world. Well, listen, Eli, Dan, Luis, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy mornings and schedule here to do this with me today. I'm super excited to have this opportunity to not just meet all of you, but to learn how we can all build it better. And I think that's what this is all about. And not just better, but how do we leave the environment better for the next generation to come? And how do we leave it safer for the next generation to come? And I think that's super important. And I commend all of you for spending your lives working on that each and every day.
Dave, thanks so much for having all of us.
Yeah, appreciate it. All right, everybody. That's a wrap.
See you soon.
Thanks for watching. Bye now.
Bye.